Okay, well, it's great to see so many. Well, it's a little scary to see so many. But I want to first begin by thanking my incredible teachers. I'm going to cry from the beginning. First, Marie Market, who helped me believe that I had a place in the community of writers. Bennington, who taught me about shape and sequence, about choreographing an emotional ride for the reader. Jenny Booley, who opened for me an entirely new and terrifying way to go about the writing process. But she helped me find the courage to bring all of myself, not just the parts with which I was comfortable. And anything I now put on paper bears to stand. So you can play again. And Peter Chackenberg, real deal guy. You know Peter, he was so attuned to the intent of the work. He really reassured me and helped me believe that I could be entirely my very strange self on the page. I also want to salute Hugh Ryan for his gentle but exacting critiques, and to Susan Cheever, who was cruel only to be kind in ways that always make the work better. A piece of good reads called Oranges. We called it the buffet of dead food. Flaccid bacon, eggs, hard-boiled and cold, and toast so tough it scratched the roofs of our mouths. Still, the meal had a touch of grace, a pyramid of oranges pulsing and alive in their pedestal bowl. My roommate, I'll call her Maggie, always took one and placed it on her nightstand to eat later. When I first saw Maggie on arrival day, I would have cast her as St. Joan. Willowy, with close-cropped hair, she projected stoic calm. Although her eyes were so glassy, it made me wonder whether she'd just been crying. It was not a love-seeking face, responsive and eager to please like mine. Her face belonged only to her. We Americans, drama and literature students, lived in a tiny London hotel, a shabby relic in what had now become the decidedly swank district of South Kensington. Our walls were putty. The metal frame beds and pockmarked desks likely bought in an auction of prison furniture. I'd unpacked by the time Maggie showed up, and feeling in the know, I introduced her to students and staff I'd already met. That first night, we sat on our double windowsill, giddy to be in London, now in the mid-70s city of models with envy with straight bangs, of Mick Jagger with his thrilling bulge, of mod boys slouching in doorways, their moody, androgynous allure delicious and disturbing. Glam rock was just breaking out, with Elton John and David Bowie, the most beautiful boy we had ever seen. Beyond this, London was just filled with the fabulous, bold souls who showed up naked at museums or set their hair on fire just because. The IRA bombings didn't gate crash until the following March. But on that September night, trying to coax our hearts to settle enough to sleep, we looked out at the surrounding rooftops. I'm so lucky to have a roommate like you, Maggie said, so confident, so outgoing. Ambushed by the compliment, I did something I will never be able to entirely explain. I began to sing. Not with her, to worse. They were songs of an eternal child, Peter Pan, Never Neverland, You Can Fly. Perhaps I wished to show her my other talents. More likely, her native traits I knew I lacked ignited my anxiety, and a random short of my fragmented self just exploded in this on performance. I think of her in that moment, an introvert, far from home, having latched onto someone she thought was safe, or perhaps was not. Still, despite her possible misgivings, we became friends. heading down each morning to the dead food buffet, and each night trading class gossip and news of movies or plays we'd seen. On weekends, we'd haul our stuff to the laundromat. As we waited for our stuff to dry, we sat on low benches poring over medieval mystery plays and English poetic drama. Here is no continuing stay. Here is no abiding stay. Despite her distracting looks, the sculptural beauty of her head, her elongated body, Maggie was not interested in being seen. She aspired to be a filmmaker, locked in a dark room, punished for the rest of my life, she joked. I envied that she could feel the reality of her own existence with no one watching. I wanted to be an actress and needed the gaze of others to assure me that I was real. Her creative impulse was to shape and structure. Mine was to shine. That fall, I did, along with most of my classmates. As young Americans with a little bit of money, ricochet from parties to gallery openings to hot new clubs where we find ourselves rubbing shoulders and other body parts with the rock stars, celebrities, and those we mistook for rock stars and celebrities. Some of our tutors, poets, and actors of modest fame pressed their advantage with students who by June would be a continent away. We dyed our hair, wore outlandish clothes, changed our names. Jack Weiss became Jackie St. James. Stephen Smythe became Sterling Swan. In and out of each other's rooms throughout the long London nights, there were so many bodies, so much desire, ambient and contagious, continually pinballing in new directions. Having long labored under the yoke of stiff competition and required achievement, we were just dizzy with joy at freedoms we could not resist. But Maggie did. She looked on, amused, never losing her grip on intensely regular habits. Bed at 11, up at 7:30, homework in the afternoons. When I danced myself into a blur at gay clubs where I was a +1 to Jackie, or crashed West End dressing rooms begging to borrow unpublished scripts where actors took me for a groupie who wanted something else, I'd return home to our call-in sons, hi Max, hi Robs, and rehash my misadventures. Her witnessing amplified my experience. Then one night, we went to see Cries and Whispers, a tale of sisters who suppressed longings for men escapades through layers of wealth, beauty, and late 19th century clothes. Maria, a cruel flirt, and Corin, a forbidding martinettes circle one another, both craving intimacy but detesting themselves for needing it. When they finally stumble into an ecstasy of touching, talking, and embracing, they just skirt the bounds of incest. Afterwards, Maria withdraws. Corin, distraught, pleads with her. You touched me, remember? Emotionally ragged and a little spooked, Maggie and I shuffled out of the theater and started walking the several miles back to our hotel. The streets were wet and dark, not too cold. Occasional headlights startled us. At some point, I realized we were holding hands. Close as we became. As we moved into winter, we were like a single figure inching her way, away from herself in a mirror. With every step, the distance doubled. The more indulgent I became, dropping daily ballet classes, gorging on greasy pub fare, the more disciplined Maggie was. Her great cheekbones became sharper, hip bones jutted from her jeans. I didn't ask what was wrong. In fact, I was secretly envious that she could endure deprivation and test the limits of her own body. I yearned for some version of this, but seemed to lack whatever Maggie had to make it real. She began to disappear at night, movie-going with Barbara, a square-framed girl with a shaved head and a leather cap who'd already published rock reviews in London's hip Time Out. I became aware that Maggie broke her own curfew again and again, often coming in after midnight. It was only fear of further humiliation that kept me from voicing Corin's plea. You touched me, remember? I'm not certain when I first noticed the oranges uneaten on Maggie's nightstand. There'd be one or two, and then the pile would grow. One day, I took one, telling myself what stealers of fruit had told themselves since the dawn of time. It won't be missed. The orange was perfect. Every vegetable lush and acidic, a tiny explosion. I didn't take it out of anger or because for pain. I took it because I wanted something. I couldn't have said what. My heart was in play, but as impenetrable to me as the sludge beneath the Thames. A few days later, I took another and noticed a small pad hidden underneath it, columns with sums, each adding to a bit more or less than 500. I made sure to dispose of the orange peel downstairs in the common kitchen. Maggie grew more remote. When we crossed paths in the hotel hall with its ghosted odors of smoke and sour milk, I sensed hesitation and inbred, a barely perceptible recoil. Did she suspect me? Still, Maggie wasn't eating her oranges and continued to hoard them. As she said nothing, whenever the room happened to be empty, and I happened to want her oranges, I took them. Oranges were free on the daily dead food buffet. It cost 5 pence at any food stand in London, but I wanted Maggie's. An orange is that much more brilliant and beautiful in a dark time. London was becoming very dark. December brought bone-chilling mists so great I could swear ash was falling from the sky. As the Thames rolled out to the North Sea, even the stone gargoyles jutting from its bridges seemed not so much frightening as frozen in their own fear. After our golden October and November, by December, the senior acting students began buckling down, prepping for graduate drama school auditions. I believe my only path toward a viable acting career was through one of the highly competitive programs in the United States. Unlike my classmates who seemed more confident or casual and rehearsed mainly in class, I'd hole up for entire weekends in nearby Brighton, dubbed by Noel Coward as a seedy spot of peers, queers, and racketeers. There, I'd rehearse my 2-minute monologues, 30, 40, 50 times a day. At sorry old hotels, I'd feed the electric heater 5 pence every half hour, eat cheap Scotch eggs at local pubs filled with compulsive smokers, and afterwards, back in my room, eat one of Maggie's purloined oranges. What buoyed me a bit was that occasionally, in rehearsal, I'd become so focused, so present, that I felt summoned to solidarity with my character. I inhabit her with divine spontaneity, like a jazz musician breaking into an expansive, inspired riff. But alas, it was hit or miss. I lacked reliable access to this creative fluency that turns a performance into something so wholehearted and unconditional that it can be shared. Something else was working against me. Any great performance is rooted in the artist's willingness to be present and exposed. For me, that proposition was excruciating. One classmate, another name changer, Albert Feldman, who'd become Joshua Secunda, used to call me that smiling girl, by which he meant false and teasing. I could not admit being as fragmented and helpless as I did, and worked hard to hide it. In February, I flew home for auditions. My first 2 at Juilliard and Tisch did not go well. Yale drama was my last chance. In a New Haven motel, I rehearsed my monologues, one classical and one contemporary, out loud, without pause, as though reading psalms through the night to chase away the shapeless terror that possessed me. Exhausted and strung out the next morning, I ascended the lighted circular stage in a small campus theater with a lone man in a weary voice in the dark of the last row. said, begin. I opened with my contemporary monologue, a scene in which Velma, a troubled 20-something, confesses the murder of her mother to a stranger who honestly just wants to get it laid. I pulled out my imaginary knife, desperately striving to project myself into Velma's complex terror and rage. A few lines into it, I knew I missed the moment when in rehearsal I'd sometimes slip into that enchanted flow and bring it home. My throat constricted, flattening my voice. My heart was a trapped bird, my dress drenched beneath the arms. The desperation that could be read from the back row was not Velma's, but mine. The actress whose character and future had just fled. It was a misery to finish. I returned to Italy, to England. Graduate school had been my only plan. While I was seeing my future evaporate, Maggie, who was willing to start at the bottom, had landed a secretarial job at CBS. I continued from time to time, filching her oranges, and figured out that the columns on her pad were an account of daily calories, about a third of what she should have been eating. One afternoon in March, a week after the IRA's Old Bailey bombing, when we were all still rattled, I entered our room and found Maggie sitting on her bed, spine curved, head down, legs crossed. She looked up, her face utterly still, as though she didn't recognize me. "Do you know what happened to my oranges?" she said. "Well, they're there on your nightstand," I offered. She was undeterred. "Someone's been taking my oranges." I thought of the black-haired women with tragic Iberian faces who leave our rooms. But despite all the unswept places within me, I would not be accused. "I don't know," I said. There was silence. Then Maggie asked, "Have you been taking my oranges?" I sat on my bed along the adjacent wall. We locked eyes across the room's wide diagonal. Mine began to sting as tears rose in my chest. Finally, I said yes. I wanted to tell her I took the oranges because they were there, or that I took them because they were alive and were hers. Because despite the evidence of her emptiness, I believed she had something I needed. I took them because I knew she was hungry but wasn't eating them. I took them because I, too, was hungry. I wanted her to know that her starvation had awakened something deep within me. I wanted to tell her, I see you. You're starving. See me. I'm starving too. Yeah. Louise. Expect a nice, easy question.
That's fantastic, and it was delivery. You said a beautiful delivery. I have seen this essay maybe around some session and I think it's very interesting when you talk about Jenna's comment about practicing, about bringing yourself and the emotional investment. Or injecting that emotion in yourself into your body. And I wonder if you have a tip for the rest of us who might be struggling with that. And sometimes you have to think on the page and it's less. Like, any good tips for the rest of us for training yourself into the work?
Yeah, I live a few decades more than most of you live. Other than that, which I can't do. I hate the expression lean in, but when you see the shame, when you feel like you want to give up, keep your sorry ass in your seat. It's like, when I just can't stand it, and I say, I cannot do this. I just remind myself, This is gold. Do it. Nobody ever has to see it. Just do it. And then have a teacher like Jenny or Peter or you look at this garbage and say, this is not garbage. You need the validation. But it's like those moments when you really feel it, that's Lisa. It's what I can say. That's all.
That's great, thank you.
Oh, Alicia, hi.
Robin, congratulations. That was amazing. You're going to make me cry. That was not garbage. I was there during that time period. I'm lived in the U.S., so I know just what you were talking about. And you put so much power into time and place and used humor without losing any of the emotional fabric of your story. And what I wanted to know, this is called Oranges. What made you choose to give so much power to your message of hunger to the story? Because it weaves throughout, there's jeopardy there, and you use such a bright object contrasting to the London scene, and I just wanted to know what choices led you to that.
Wow, that's a great question and tough question. We're just going to see, so I'm going to try to be very clear. First is that it is a true story. It really was oranges, it really was Speer, and then London really was a really good story. And I think when we had the memory, it was more like an image, like I saw the daughter was like dealt the ash and this is not going to have just like remember this oranges. So part of it was just right there in the first image I had of it, and the reason the image stayed with me is that the change stayed with me. Never explain it. It wants to be, for decades, when it's like, why was I stealing food from my manners? Like, that's disgusting. Okay, right. Let's go.